Did Trump just end the Iraq war? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. So I'm watching Tucker Carlson on Friday. And on Friday, Tucker Carlson, who is the only one apparently on Fox News that does not want war with Iran, had a guest on, and the guest talked about a resolution that may be passed over the weekend. Now, of course, it would be weekend his time, because it was on Friday, where the Iraqi parliament might vote to get us out of there. And of course, the question remains, are we going to honor that? Now, we do not belong in Iraq. There was a deal between Iraq and Washington, actually, which we'll talk about in a second, wherein we were still there for support reasons, among other things stated. But the question was, would we honor their request for us to leave? So here we go. This is Fox News. U.S. Parliament calls for expulsion of U.S. troops from the country following drone attack. Let's keep in mind, we did this attack on their soil. I'm going to constantly beat this drum. We authorized a drone attack on the soil of another sovereign nation. I don't think Americans realize this. If somebody did this to us, can you imagine if the Iranians saw a guy that they didn't like from, let's say, I don't know, Russia? Let's go with the Russia thing. And they drone bombed the guy at JFK airport. How would we respond to that? We would say, look, regardless of whatever your quarrel is with this guy, this is America. You don't go and drone bomb stuff in our country. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. But anyway, here we go. Iraq's parliament calls for the expulsion of U.S. troops from the country following the drone attack. Iraqi lawmakers approved a resolution Sunday calling to expel U.S. troops from the country following an American drone attack that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The resolution asked the Iraqi government to end the agreement under which Washington sent forces to Iraq more than 4 years ago to help in the fight against the Islamic State terror group. Remember, this was to fight ISIS. Now, again, ISIS has been, this whole thing has been extremely interesting because, as we talked about in the previous two videos, ISIS was a Salafist Sunni group that was wreaking havoc in the area around Syria, which has a heavy Shia population, and Iraq, which has a mixed population, but pockets of Iraq are Shia dominated. And so when the Iranians were helping to fight the Islamic State, because the Iranians are the largest Shia state on the planet, and so the Islamic State created some very, very strange bedfellows. You had the Saudis, who is a Sunni nation, right? Was sort of the epitome of Sunnism, is in Saudi Arabia, who were supporting ISIS. And then you had the Iranians, which were supporting Hezbollah and other militia groups to fight ISIS. And then you had the Kurds and Peshmerga, who have their own interests and don't care about the Shia-Sunni struggle, but do care about their own struggle and establishing their own Kurdish sovereign state within Iraq. And some of them, as we've covered in other areas, wanted to create a Kurdish highway around Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon. Very, very crazy, complex situation. Long story short, the Islamic State created all of these weird, strange alliances. So now you've got the Iraqis, who were at the throats of the Iranians for decades, now becoming bedfellows, as it were. And that's because the Islamic State was, I mean, we all saw what they did. They did things beyond just standard warfare. I mean, they were doing things that were just absolutely atrocious on the human level. And so everybody's kind of looking at each other and going, okay, well, look, we had problems with each other, Iran, but nothing like these guys. So anyway, part of the deal was we were going to go down there to help them with the Islamic State. So lo and behold, we're still in Iraq. Of course, Mr. Obama this was 4 years ago. So this was during the Obama administration. He told us that there were going to be no boots on the ground to fight the Islamic State. Of course, there's no boots on the ground in Syria, but we made a deal with the Iraqi government to send troops there. What's the difference? I don't know. You tell me, Mr. Obama. The resolution asked the Iraqi government to end the agreement under which Washington sent forces to Iraq more than 4 years ago. The Iraqi government, now here's what they're saying. The Iraqi government has an obligation to end the presence of all foreign forces on Iraqi soil and prevent it from using Iraqi lands, waters, and airspace for or any other reason, Iraqi Parliament Speaker Mohammed al-Halbousi said in the address to lawmakers before the vote. The majority of about 180 legislators present in Parliament voted in favor of the resolution. It was backed by most Shia members of Parliament who held a majority of the seats. Many Sunni and Kurdish legislators did not show up for the session, apparently because they oppose abolishing the deal. Now, why would that be? Why would the Sunni and the Kurdish legislators not want that to happen? Well, it's very simple. Because if we go, then the main military force to protect them against ISIS is going to be Iran. And Iran, as we said, is the largest Shia state on the planet Earth. And so the Sunnis and the Kurds do not want an Iraq-Iran relationship, especially at the Shia level. They don't want that. So you see how complex this stuff is, and you see how complex it is that we're sending troops into this area with all these moving parts that are crazy. But the Iraq Parliament vote doesn't mean the U.S. military has to leave the country immediately. It's a non-binding vote, which is seen as mostly symbolic. The 5,000 U.S. troops in Iraq are at the invitation of the country's executive branch, the Prime Minister's officer, not Parliament. It's up to the Iraqi Prime Minister whether or not the troops will be expelled. The vote comes 2 days after a U.S. drone strike killed Soleimani at the Baghdad airport, ratcheting up tensions in the region and raging fears of war. There are over 100,000 Iranian-backed militia fighters in Iraq. Their leaders have called for revenge for Soleimani's death. Meanwhile, the U.S.-led coalition in Iraq has officially paused the training of Iraqi forces in the support of their operations against ISIS to focus on protecting its troops and bases, according to a coalition statement released Sunday. So, this looks like a good news, bad news situation. The good news is anybody who was tracking Mr. Trump's promises was talking about getting us out of the forever wars in the Middle East. So on the one hand, that's good news. On the other hand, I'm not particularly certain that a Shia pocket and a Shia alliance between Iraq and Iran is necessarily a good thing for United States interests. But at the end of the day, these are two sovereign nations. And obviously, there's a Shia majority in Iraq, and they've been at war with the Iranians for quite some time. And if those two groups decide that they want to finally have peace together and they've got a common enemy in ISIS and us, then it's not our business to tell them that they can't do that. So I'm not certain that an Iraq-Iran co-belligerency is necessarily a good thing for us, but quite frankly, that's really none of our business. This might be a symbolic thing of like, get us out of here, but at the same time, the Prime Minister has to call that play. Now, what I would like to know is, again, on the ground level, if you're a Kurd or you're a Sunni, you're going to want the Americans there. And so the Prime Minister has got to make a decision that's going to it's going to be able to satiate everybody, which at this point it's generally impossible, right? Like you're never, if you're a Kurd and you're a Sunni, you're not necessarily going to be happy. And keep in mind, even though during the Saddam Hussein regime, that everybody was terrified of Saddam, you've got to understand that, especially in the Middle East, and this is just human nature, the penchant for retributive justice. These guys in ISIS who represented Sunni Islam went out and massacred on a multitude of occasions Shia. And us being there, now on the ground, the 5,000 troops on the ground, at some level creates a deterrent for a massive vengeance operation from the Shia back to the Sunnis, right? Because, again, ISIS was a Saudi Arabia-backed group, which were Sunni, which went around and did a whole bunch of horrible killing. Now the balance of power has shifted, especially if the Iranians and the Iraqis really get themselves together. Like I just said to you here, they've got 100,000 Shia militiamen there, and if we leave, you can bet your bottom dollar that we're probably gonna see some retributive justice here, against the Sunnis in the area, and the Kurds are probably once again going to be put in a situation where they're marginalized like they've been since the inception of the attempt at a Kurdish state. So it looks like a mess over there, but here's what I would say. We don't belong there. And I think it's a horrible thing if those things happen, but we need to get out of there. It's none of our business. And I think this gives Mr. Trump, a great excuse to say, we're out of here. The ISIS threat has pretty much been crippled. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. And the Iranians and the Iraqis can handle the ISIS in the way that they need to be handled. And so there is no reason for us to be there in Iraq. None. And so I would hope that Mr. Trump would jump on this and say, even though it's symbolic and really doesn't mean anything until the Prime Minister does something, I would hope that Mr. Trump takes this as an opportunity to get us the hell out of Dodge. And if he does that, then in killing this guy, he may have effectively, on an ironic level, ended the war in Iraq and lessened the U.S. presence there. That would be awesome. More to come. We missed a video yesterday where Trump said, hey man, I've got 52 military sites. So he basically told the Iranians, hey man, if you guys want some smoke, go for it. Like I said, this also may be a way for the Iranians to save face, because again, I've been seeing nothing but all these posts from people where they're talking about, look, the Iranians are this, the Iranians are that, World War III. It is not going to be World War III. And by the way, all you Russia conspiracy people, what happened? Because here's Trump killing the Iranian equivalent of the CIA head, who are, as we all know, allies with the Russians. This is not something that Vladimir Putin would have wanted. I thought that our president was in the back pocket of the Russians. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. FYI, the Russian conspiracy stuff was dumb, and it's always been dumb. And if you are still propagating this Russia conspiracy nonsense in light of this stuff, it's like Noam Chomsky said, where is the payoff for the Russians? Because we keep doing stuff that undermines Russian interests in the world. So I don't see how this is helpful to you. Just drop the Russian conspiracy stuff now, please. It's over. It's over. Okay, so look, man, this might result in us being able to get the heck out of Iraq, and it also might result in the Iranians being able to save face, because yeah, they threatened us. What else were they supposed to do? We killed a major member of their government. Were they just supposed to sit there and be quiet? Of course they were going to threaten us. Whether or not they action those stories is a completely different story altogether. And so this move might actually allow them to save face, right? It might, if we get out of there, the Iranians might say, well, we were just about to unleash hell on the Americans, but they ran with their tails between their legs because they were so scared of the Iranian government and what we were going to do to them. So, and if he says that on the national stage, then fine. We all know what the deal is. So who knows? Who knows? This move might be... Now, look, I don't think that Trump calculated this at all, these types of eventualities. The guy just keeps becoming the most luckiest guy in the world. He makes this call to Zelensky, and then he baits the Democrats into doing this ridiculous impeachment stuff that raised his approval ratings and made him the most admired man in the country, tied with Barack Obama. Can you imagine that? He raised a record amount of money ever of all time by himself. due to this impeachment foolishness. He got the Democrats to say ridiculous things like even if he gets reelected, we'll go after him again, which is going to be used as fodder in November. They're going to play that on a loop so that the Democrats lose the House as well as get obliterated in the Senate. So these things just keep backfiring and turning out for the good of Trump. So now here we are. He kills this key Iranian leader, and now the Iraqi government wants 5,000 U.S. troops out of Iraq. And this might give the Iranians the ability to save face in this entire situation and not attack us because they can spin the narrative that we ran from them because we were scared of them. Which everybody will know is not true, but at least it will give them the ability to maintain their dignity. And Trump keeps winning. It's unbelievable to me. What can you say? Crazy world we live in. We are going to be tracking this very, very closely because, I mean, it's obviously gotten historical import here. Now more than ever, guys, love your neighbor, take care of yourself. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.